Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 128 of the longest tenured Denver Nuggets spin-off podcast in the world. Welcome to the DNVR Nuggets' Serbian Corner. My name is Miroslav, and before we begin, please let me remind you to like the video on YouTube, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the DNVR Sports YouTube channel and DNVR Nuggets podcast channel. The audio version is perfect for your commute or to make your office/home office time more bearable. If you want to support the show more directly, you can become a Patreon supporter at patreon.com/MiroslavCUK, just like my Sicko tier supporters, Peter Plummer and Daniel Lynch. Oh boy, there's a lot of stuff to talk about today, so I'm gonna try to go through my intro quickly as possible, but there's a lot of games to cover, so I'm going to give it a try to do it quickly. The Kings game. I usually spend a good chunk of these game recaps talking about everyone's contributions, and this game, with Sacramento coming to town on their second night of a back-to-back, was a good chance for everyone to shine. All of Brown, Porter, Murray, and Westbrook had good games. They combined for almost 80 points. This is the moment, though, to talk about our Lord and Savior, Nikola Jokić. First, he had a triple-double midway through the third quarter. Then he hit a three-quarter court heave to end the third quarter and give his team a 25-point lead. The other guys messed around a bit in the fourth, so he had to return and had 22 rebounds and 17 assists halfway through the fourth. And to put the cherry on top, he scored 10 points in the last 4 minutes to seal the victory. Yeah, he did all that in one game. Sabonis did all he could and looked like a discount Jokić out there. At least he tried. The Timberwolves game, a cold shower of a game. Joker started dominantly, scoring 13 points in the first quarter. Jamal was also good with 7 in the same period, but the Nuggets couldn't stop anything. 40 points conceded. A lot of it was sloppy play on offense. Joker and Westbrook had 4 turnovers apiece in the first half, which caused a lot of transition points for the T-Wolves. The Nuggets lost all 4 quarters, mostly because they lost all 4 Joker stints. On the other side, Anthony Edwards was excellent. He made 3 3-pointers, but it felt like he drained 10. That's how big each of them was. The Nuggets couldn't handle Minnesota's physicality again. Bulls game? There's an interesting stat that shows that only 3 out of the top 10 teams in 3-point attempts per game have the winning record. So if you're a high-volume 3-point shooting team, that is by no means a guarantee you're going to be successful based on just that. But if you are a high-volume 3-point shooting team and you face a team that is better than you but doesn't bother chasing you off of the 3-point line, you might win by hitting 24 threes. This is what happened to the lousy Chicago Bulls. Denver played a very good game on offense. Joker was dominating with another monster triple-double along with his career-high 5 dunks in a game. The Bulls had nothing for them but kept finding themselves alone on the 3-point line and were keeping pace with the Nuggets. The good guys needed to keep playing perfect offensive basketball to stay ahead. And as soon as they started turning the ball over in the third, the lead started to melt fast. Then in the fourth quarter, started with the Joker on bench, and the Nuggets lost 2 minutes and 43 seconds by 11 points and never recovered against the team that was red hot from the outside of that line. Jamal, Strotter, Payton, Porter, and Gordon couldn't score in that stint and got fried on the other end. So disappointing. Another bad loss just when we thought we were done with those. Knicks game. Ooh, this is a longer one. I didn't watch this game live and woke up to the reports of a very bad Jokić game. So I used my watching to key in on his individual performance. First, he made a bad foul after a successful pump fake by Towns. He should have just let him go. Then seconds later, he got called for a very soft foul, his second just 2 minutes into the game. Malone then subbed him out and let him cool off on the bench for good 30 minutes of real time. When he returned, he was extra careful not to be called for any ticky-tack fouls, so he could stay in the game, and that looks awful to ones who don't understand what is going on. Other than that loud detail, I thought he moved really well on defense. I also felt he was too much in a facilitator mode in the second half of the second quarter he played in, so he ended up with just 4 points in 9 minutes at the half. Jamal was in good rhythm, so I didn't feel Joker deterring to him was a particularly bad decision. He was screening his ass off for him, and that looked good early in the third quarter. And just as the Nuggets developed an 8-point lead, Jamal, who was red hot at that point, made a bad live ball turnover and followed it with a clear pad foul, his fourth personal, so he had to go out to the bench. You can call Joker's offensive game in the second half not assertive. Some will say he got ghosted by Jamal, and it's all fair. The reason people were disgusted with his performance early in the fourth quarter was probably 5 3-point attempts within minutes by Nikola, and he hit 2 of those, with the last one being especially egregious since he was foul hunting on that one. And I will tell you, he was playing for 24 straight minutes. It's easy to be the general after the battle, but those were bad rotation decisions by Malone. As for Jamal, it was a very confident and spry game for him, but too many guys had bad games around him. Maybe dribble a bit less. 76ers game, note number 1, Jamal Murray. He had an amazing game. An amazing hair game, that is. He debuted his full-on afro and pulled it off perfectly. I usually don't care about players showing up at the game with a 3-hour masterpiece of a hairstyle, but it was obvious Jamal was channeling his inner Dr. J, so he delivered with 31, 6, and 11 piece. The other reason I liked it was the fact that he appeared to be 6'6", with his new look, but the added length didn't help with the team or individual defense. Note number 2, speaking of defense, here is how well the Nuggets played on that side of the court. The good guys shot 66% from the field against the 19 and 28 11 seed in the East, and still just barely won. The Nuggets played perfect offensive basketball down the stretch, but gained no ground since they didn't stop the Sixers not once. Note number 3, the Nuggets closed the game without Russell Westbrook, who got injured early in the fourth. Peyton Watson, by the way, also got injured in this game. Note number 4, Aaron Gordon still doesn't look like himself. He is trying to lift himself by doing too much on offense and times, and I'm not loving it. Last note, all of Christian, Mike, and Julian were snipers in this game. Thank God, since if they weren't this, this would be a darker show to be at. Finally, last night, Hornets game, this was a dumb game, and thank God the Nuggets won. They played as well as they needed to play against one of the worst teams in the league that didn't have 6 of their guys, including most of their main guys. This resulted in them having a 15-point lead several times, but a lot of really lazy turnovers kept the Hornets in the game. The Nuggets had a 9-point lead going into the fourth quarter, but then something happened to them. All the non-Jokić Nuggets combined for 8 points on 4 of 16 shooting in the fourth. It was fortunate that Joker's 9 points in this period were enough to first wipe away the 4-point deficit 50 seconds before the end, and then win by 3 at the end. Horrible game. Joker with a monster triple-double, Christian with a double-double after having 19 points at the half, and Jamal reduced both the volume of his points and his hair in this game. Woohoo, that was a long one. Okay. Let me introduce my guests for today. First, this is the annual tradition before the trade deadline. The best NBA collective bargaining agreement expert I know of. So what he calls illegal, I give up on, and there's a lot of stuff that is not possible to do in the NBA teams for the NBA teams in 2025. You might know him as a Stat Coach or Broncos Coach, but he is my and your favorite CBA expert, the head of NBA research at StatsPerform, Jake Coyne. Welcome back to the show, Jake.
You're too kind, Miroslav, but always happy to be on your show. It's always one of the best prepared shows to be on. You do a great job, and happy to talk some trades today.
Yeah, I need to grease you up because I need you in these kind of situations. Like I just don't want to spitball and just shoot from the hip. Like let's, I don't know, trade Anthony Davis for Luka Doncic or something crazy stupid like that. Like we need to have some boundaries there.
Always need some boundaries, but apparently some NBA GMs do not. So happy to talk about it.
Excellent. Last but not least, one of the regulars on this show. He is a co-host of a Four Corners Denver Nuggets podcast and the best bowler among the Nuggets diehards. It's Rayvone Hackshaw. Welcome back, Ray.
Good to be here. Good to be here. Great to see you both.
So you guys had a chance to sleep on it a bit because it happened at late night last night for you, but it was early morning for me, so I was awake for these 14 hours since the Luka Doncic to Los Angeles Lakers trade happened. Give me your initial reactions to it and what the hell is going on. Let's start with Jake.
Well, my initial reaction, just like most people, was not believing it. You know, I thought that Shams' account got hacked or whatever until we started seeing it confirmed in other places. Once it was confirmed, my reaction was, what is Dallas doing? This does not make any sense. And I think that still remains my reaction to this point. We're talking about a guy who, at the age of 25, has had about as much success as anybody who's ever played in the NBA by that age. Projects to be one of the best players that this league will see. You know, how high he gets on that list, I don't know, but he projects as that. And to trade him for a guy who's well over his prime, at least with injuries considered. You know, he's not super old yet, but Anthony Davis, not the healthiest guy. It's just a big problem, and I don't understand it. I don't think I ever will understand it. And we will see how it works out for them.
So the way the news rolled out, first it was the original tweet by Shams saying that Luka is going to Lakers and AD is coming to Dallas, and there's this component of Max Christie and a first round pick in 2029. But then some different pieces of information came out too. One of them was that it was Dallas who started this trade process. So it wasn't the Luka trade request or anything like that. It was Dallas who wanted to get out of Luka Doncic business because of some concerns they had. So they asked Lakers if they're interested in trading AD for it. And then there was this different report on the Lakers side that the Lakers needed some time to think about it because, you know, you don't want to give up such a great player like Anthony Davis for like a borderline top 20 player of all time in Luka Doncic. And at the end, they found like a way to get a nice winning situation for AD as well. Like he will have chance to be on a good team in Dallas. So I guess we're gonna do that. Does all of that sound suspicious to you, Ray? Like some really expensive PR agencies were hired around this trade, at least from my view.
There's a couple of possibilities, I think. One of them might be that. But I also, you know, I was talking about this with Peter in CT last night on a Twitter space, is that I have to wonder if Dallas maybe internally feels like they know something about Luka that no one else does. And I think that might be the theory that they're running with. I don't know if they love Anthony Davis that much, if they think he's that good of a player, but I don't know. I think we'll find out with time.
Jake, it doesn't sound like the Mavs were shopping Luka a lot around the league. Is this something that's normally being done when you are, getting rid of possibly the best player in the history of your franchise?
Well, it's interesting. You think back on like the Nuggets franchise, and Carmelo Anthony, when he was in Denver, was one of the top, 3 or something basketball players that they had ever had. And when he was going through his trade process, it was very widespread. They talked to a lot of people. Really came down to the Knicks and the Nets at the time were the best deals on the table. And they went for what was the best deal. The issue with this thing to me is that, because I have seen like this argument, like Ray is saying, like maybe they know something. And I guess that's possible. But if that's the case, why aren't you doing a widespread search and getting as much as you can? To me, this seems very targeted, very pointed, like they legitimately believe inside that building that this trade gets them closer to championship contention or winning a championship. And it just doesn't make sense to me for that reason. Maybe a lot of us will be proven wrong, and Kyrie and AD will be this great combination. But even if it is, I just don't think you got enough for him.
Why this happens only to the Lakers and not to some other franchises? Is it suspicious to you that it was the Lakers that were the team that was chosen as a trade partner? Is AD the only defensive stalwart in the league that would improve the Mavs defense, as Nico Harrison mentioned in his presser?
So I do appreciate the idea that Kyrie and Anthony Davis might have a better synergy than Kyrie and Luca did, or that Anthony Davis and LeBron did. When I think about the trade, in the beginning I was shocked, as anyone else was. But the more I think about it, the more I wonder maybe if they wanted to do something that Luca, maybe they asked him, maybe they didn't, if he would be happy with. And looking at the league and the history of the league, this just seems to happen. So whether you want to call that fate or providence or the unseen hand of the basketball gods, it feels like something. There's a driver here. I don't know, but it's very consistent. It's a long-term trend in the NBA that a star player who's unhappy in a small market goes to the Lakers.
So here's my take, and I'm putting a tinfoil hat, and then I'm putting another tinfoil hat on top of it, because this is not a report. I wasn't talking to Adam Silver, and if anybody is curious about it, I might go to the Joe Rogan podcast after this when I say this. So here's my take. We know everybody at ESPN is always saying that the league is better when the Lakers are good. It's something I've heard probably 300 times, and I don't even have ESPN at my house. I live in Serbia. What if Adam Silver called Jeannie Buss and whatever the name of the new Maverick owner is, and said, we hired the best PR bullshit lawyers in the world. They will prepare the best possible PR stunts for both of you, so it would look believable that the Mavs really wanted Anthony Davis for Luca, and that the Lakers were really sad about losing AD. So they found a great contending team for him. Now, for this, our partners at Emirates will buy whatever your company's dear Mavs owner sell for $1 billion as compensation for your trouble. And we will also give you a number one pick in like 2027 when that pick will be good again. Like I just, if there's no under the table talks, I just cannot fathom the Mavs being sincere in saying this will make our team better. And yeah, you mentioned, Ray, that maybe the synergy between Kyrie and Luca is not as great as possible synergy between Kyrie and AD. So trade Kyrie. Don't trade the top 3 player in the world and expect great results from that. But I think we've gone. Before we finish this segment, is there any ripple effects on the Nuggets you expect from this trade, Jake?
I don't know that there's anything direct right now. I would say that, for the people that really believe in their hearts that Luka's going to go play in Denver with Jokić one day, I would say those odds are low, but those odds also might have increased slightly because of this deal. The reasoning for that is, Luka now is no longer eligible for his max possible contract. I haven't done the math, but just doing it in my head, I think he stands to lose something like $50 million over the course of the next contract, because now he can't get that deal with the Mavericks. And so now, should the Nuggets ever put themselves in position to have that type of cap space, they can theoretically offer him just as much money, or at least close to what the Lakers or another team could. So that would probably be the only real effect right now outside of like on the court stuff. We'll see how they match up and everything. But yeah.
What do you think, Ray?
A little bit less on the Nuggets because I don't think they have too many immediate. This doesn't matter to them immediately, but for the league, I think this may be one of the early stages of a sort of shift in how teams want to build themselves when we talk about what they're willing to pay and what they're not willing to pay for star players, especially when we talk about games played, consistency, work ethic, and the nature of winning championships that necessarily requires those things and getting the most out of your team.
It's all fair. I don't think Dallas is a harder opponent for Denver now with AD compared to having Luka, because there's one amazing player less to think about. Sure, maybe Joker's job will be slightly harder, but I believe the rest of the team will have less trouble with Dallas. As far as Lakers go, I don't know. Lakers are going to need to figure out who's going to be their starting center. I don't think Luka should be their starting center, so they probably should trade for somebody or sign somebody on the buyout market. But right now, if you think the Nuggets have bad defense, just check out the Lakers roster. There's no defense on that team at all. Okay, let's take our first break, and after that, we're gonna talk a lot more about the Denver Nuggets. And before we can do that, where is it? It is time for me to talk about Empire Today. If you need new flooring, there's no need to think about anybody else. Just check out Empire Today. With Empire Today, you get shop-at-home convenience, the right products for your needs, quick and professional installation, and a price match guarantee. Empire Today is the best place to get new flooring. So, of course, they have copycats, and they will talk about stuff like lowest prices in the market and so on. That's because they are putting floors in your house they wouldn't put in theirs. Empire Today's philosophy is to help you find what you need, not overwhelm you with thousands of choices and substitutes. What they leave out of their selection is as important as what they put in. Their virtual floor designer is a great way to see how new floors will look in any space, including your room. Flooring is all Empire Today does. They live and breathe flooring, so you can be confident you're getting honest, upfront advice. They service their own warranties. If an issue does arise, just call Empire. Schedule a free in-home estimate today. All listeners can receive a $350 off discount when they use the promo code DNVR. Restrictions apply. See empiretoday.com/DNVR for details. That's empiretoday.com/DNVR. Okay, we are back, and it is time to show the good old reliable presentation. And the first question I have, it's actually Jake's question from his presentation. Are the Nuggets stuck? So last summer, Calvin Booth made a bunch of moves, letting KCP walk first, then trading away 3 second-rounders to get off 1 year of Reggie Jackson's $5 million contract, signing Dario Saric on a mini MLE Nuggets special 1+1 with a player option contract, drafting Darren Holmes second after trading another bunch of seconds to go up in the draft, and finally signing Westbrook on a minimum 1+1 deal. So, Jake, how did you feel about those moves when they happened, and how do you think about them now? Is there any significant difference there?
Yeah. Well, without digging too deep on each move in particular, I was one of the people that thought Russell Westbrook was a good move for both off the court things as well as just some of the pace and foul drawing that he can bring just with his aggressive style of play. But you talk about some of those other things. I think, the way I look at it is, everything is a tool to get better. And so draft picks, salary exceptions like the mid-level exception, these are all tools you have to get better. And then, you have to grade how well you use those tools in pursuit of getting better. So, while I think everybody thought Dario Saric was going to be better than he's been, both people in the NBA and fans. So I think the process there was fine, but it just hasn't worked out. And so you look at that, you look at the Reggie Jackson signing the year before. I think he played fine while he was here, but, it didn't exactly help you a whole lot. And then you use draft picks to get off that deal. So you kind of grade it everything together and you say, okay, well, we've used 2 mid-level exceptions since last summer, the Reggie Jackson signing summer. And then we've used 3 second-round picks to get off him, and we've used 3 second-round picks to get Holmes. And how many of those players are helping you this year? Well, the answer is none. And so I think that's a really hard thing. And, like I said, some people grade based on process, and you would look at the Saric move and say that was good process. But you also have to look at the results. And if you look at the results, I think it's fair to say that things have not gone well overall, despite there being some bright spots. I think Calvin's a great drafter. I think the Russell Westbrook move was great. And so there are bright spots, but I would think you'd have to grade it as subpar.
So basically, under this new CBA, if you're a contender and try to keep contending, considering the aprons involved, you have like 2 pathways. One is just sign everybody back, bring everybody back like Boston did as a true contender, as a champion, or like a random team like Phoenix Suns who just keep exploding with their cap sheet. Like they have like a $160 million luxury tax bill for this season, which is pretty crazy. But then there's this other path, trying to stay flexible, and this is what the Nuggets chose, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think maybe to a degree they're kind of trying to walk the line between both things, which can be tough. But I think they do value the flexibility a lot. But one thing I point out in there, and one thing that I've wanted for years for the Nuggets to do, was just to keep more mid-sized contracts on hand. If you could have re-signed KCP, you would have been in the second apron, at least initially, but you could have possibly got under it later. There's other examples going back, 4 or 5 years of guys that I wonder, why not keep him around for $12 million a year? And then if you don't, need him, you can always trade him. That's one really tough thing about the Nuggets is you go from Zeke Naji, who's almost untradeable at $8.8 million. You have to jump all the way up to Michael Porter at $36 million. And it just makes it really hard to use your flexibility to get better.
Yeah. So over here, I've listed the way you separated the contracts on the Nuggets roster. first we have a couple of guys. Well, we have Nikola Jokić, who is, I guess after Luka Doncic got traded, everybody is tradable. But let's for now say that Nikola Jokić is not go anywhere. So you keep him out of the discussion. Then you have two guys that cannot be traded this season, and that's Aaron Gordon and Jamal Murray, because they signed extensions too late for them to be tradable before this trade deadline. And then we have three groups of guys who either have a positive trade value, an unknown or a neutral trade value, and a negative trade value. Now, you already mentioned Zeke Nagy with a negative trade value. What does that mean if you're trying to trade Zeke Nagy or Dario Saric right now?
Yeah, to me, it just means you're going to need to include assets just to move off those deals. It's kind of hard under this new CBA. There's not a lot of like data points to refer to when it comes to things like salary dumps. So it's kind of hard to say like, oh, well, what would it take? I don't know that we have enough data to say for sure. But, if you're messing around on the trade machine or whatever, and you're including one or both of those guys, you need to put yourself in the other team's shoes and say, okay, I'm getting these long-term money or medium term for Saric. I need something to be taking this money. And so that's kind of the question you have to ask yourself.
So basically, if we look at this list, the positive trade value guys are only Michael Porter Jr., Christian Brown, Julian Strother, and Peyton Watson. Like, these are the four guys the Nuggets could theoretically trade before the trade deadline, where you expect something good to come from the other side. And this will be very important when we look at your proposed trades. There are these middle tier guys in Darren Holmes, Pickett, Tyson, and Westbrook, who basically, they're not sweeteners, but they're also not like baggage or bad money in the trade blocks. So these are the values we're going to use. So let's start with the available draft capital. Right now, the Nuggets have only the 2031 first-round pick, right? And no second-round picks. And there are some pick swaps available, if I'm not mistaken, 26, 28, and 30, right? First-round pick swaps, which have some value too. Now, the Phoenix Suns traded away their own 2031, if I'm not mistaken, first-round pick to get three very limited first-round picks from, was it Utah? Right. So heavily protected first-round picks. Is that something that the Nuggets could do to try to get more pieces of pie in draft assets before the trade deadline?
Yeah, so I'll tell you kind of legally how it works, and then I'd love to hear what you and Ray think as far as should they do it. But, the difference between the Nuggets 2031 pick and the Suns is that the Nuggets, the picks they've traded already leading up to that, have protections on them that could potentially push those picks further back. Now, it's unlikely just based on their team that happens, but it is possible. And so what happens is if you trade that 2031 pick now, and any of the picks in 25, 27, or 29 fall under protections, then now the team that took your 2031 pick, they get nothing, because at the time of the trade, the 2032 pick is not allowed to be traded. Yes. And so that can't get pushed back. The 2031 pick can't get pushed back. And so that in itself makes the Nuggets pick a little less valuable, as well as I think some of the opinions about the Nuggets as a team around the league probably makes it a little less valuable than the Suns, who are a lot more volatile, I think. But, we saw this happen maybe like 5 years ago with the Lakers. I believe it was. They had traded a pick, and if they fell into a certain range. I think it was the year that LeBron might have been injured. I'm kind of foggy on the memory of it, but this almost happened with the Lakers 5 years ago or so. And so this is definitely a thing. However, I would say the odds of Denver getting 3 picks, I don't know if it's likely. They could maybe get 2 though. And so, I'd love to hear what you guys think. Is that worth it or not?
Ray, would you try something this sort of draft capital arithmetics before the trade?
I think it's one of those things that you do your due diligence on, and you ask around and you see if you can get a good deal, but probably not, I guess, is what I would say. I don't think there's that much to be gained by trying to turn that pick, which is probably a late first round pick, into other maybe late round picks. We'll see. Late first round picks, I should say. But that's just me.
So what are the strengths and weaknesses of the current roster, or which kind of players should the Nuggets be interested in trading for before the deadline? Let's start with Ray this time. What would be your priority for the Nuggets before Thursday deadline?
I don't. So I have to preface this with the fact that I don't see any trades that, in my opinion, break up the core 4. I guess namely trading Michael Porter right now. In the offseason, more of a conversation, but right now that do a lot for Denver. And given the assets they have left, if you wanted to trade Strawther and maybe find a perimeter player that is a little bit better in the short term for him, I would understand that. Or if you wanted to look for front court depth that was an upgrade over Zeke Naji or Dario Saric, I would understand that as well. I think those are the 2 things that I'm looking for.
Jake, I already know what are the ideas you have from your presentation. By the way, you can find Jake's presentation, which is a great preview of Nuggets deadline options. The link is in the description of the show. Jake does this every year for several years now. So the first, and I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, these trade proposals are not what you propose the Nuggets should do. It's just the 5 different kind of shapes of trades that are available to them and what kind of players those trades could yield. So the first trade proposition you made is to trade Zeke Naji, who is a negative value contract, Julian Strawther, who is a positive value contract, Jalen Pickett, a neutral one, and the 2031 first-round pick for Corey Kispert and 2 second-round picks. Now, this, at the first glance, look like a horrible trade for the Nuggets, but I like it because it's pretty realistic, because people should know that first 2031 first-round pick is not as valuable as they think. The Nuggets are just a really good team, and as long as they have Nikola Jokić, they are going to keep being a good team. But there's a second part to this trade you propose here.
Yeah, so this first trade scenario I put is kind of the motivation behind it was me looking around and saying, how can they make an upgrade in a trade, but also cut off enough salary so that they can get under the first tax apron. And what that allows you to do is you can get more expensive buyout players. And so that was the goal with this trade, was make an upgrade, but also get under that first apron. And so I talk about a few buyout guys in that document, but I think you can look at this trade and say it's Naji, Strawther, Pickett, and the pick for Kispert, a couple second rounders, and then Bruce Brown, for example. Or, it could be a handful of buyout guys that you take into account, whatever one you prefer. But that's how I would kind of view it, is, hey, we're giving up this pick, but we're getting 2 rotation players for, two guys that are out of the rotation and Strother, who I'm not totally convinced is going to play a ton in the playoffs. So when you look at it that way, I think giving up the pick makes a little bit more sense.
So basically, the depth chart you created here is starters of Westbrook, Murray, Porter, Gordon, and Jokić, and behind them, Bruce Brown, Christian Brown, Corey Kispert, Peyton Watson, and DJ at the 5. You know what? This is a very solid top 9 for sure. Very, very fortified top 9. What do you think about this depth chart, Ray?
So I'm biased. I have to introduce my bias here. I'm from Maryland, so I'm very aware of the goings on in DC. And first of all, most players who are playing in DC, when they leave DC, they have something to live for, and they tend to play better than they were when they were there. Second of all, I think Corey Kispert's a good ad. I think he would provide a lot of the shooting that Denver needs, and is a mature player in a way that Julian Strother is not necessarily. If you were going to use the assets, I think that's a good move. It would give you some depth, give you some reliability, give you someone Malone hopefully trusts to play, and gives them more space, I think, to take on and move guys up the ladder as far as buyout candidates, as far as giving a guy like Trey Alexander, how much more value are you going to get from him than you would get from Jalen Pickett? I don't know if the difference is huge. So I'm for it.
I would just say, I don't get access to a ton of inside information or anything, and I'm not a reporter, but I can tell you guys that there are people in the Nuggets front office who like Corey Kispert and on the coaching staff.
For several years now, yeah.
I know he would be very valued by the team if he were to come here.
I like him a lot.
Excellent. Let's take one short break, and after that, we'll dive into some more trade propositions. Don't go anywhere. Okay, we are back, and our next trade idea is a big one, trading the most valuable contract on the team, the big swing. Michael Porter Jr., Julian Strother, and Jalen Pickett, no picks, for DeAndre Hunter and Bogdan Bogdanovic. All of this would be probably needed to get 2 rotation pieces in Hunter and Bogdan. Right, Jake?
Yeah, I think so. And I think this trade's been covered a lot by people in Nuggets media, so no need for me to dig too deep on it. But again, I'm not personally in favor of trading Michael Porter at this point. I think he provides too much to the offense, even when he's not shooting. Guys that size with that type of 3-point volume and accuracy. If you look at the spacing with him on and off the court, it's pretty stark difference. So not personally in favor of it, but I do think if there's like this kind of trade, that this one's the most realistic as opposed to a Cam Johnson or a Zach LaVine or anything like that.
We know that Michael Porter is extremely valuable on the Nuggets roster in particular because of the spacing he creates and being a tall target for Nikola Jokić, which makes it easier for him to get those nice shots around the rim where he has a really nice touch with. But having said that, we already know that Michael Porter is not somebody you can play without question against every team in the playoffs. We've seen him struggle against the Portland Trailblazers. Last year, he was amazing against the Lakers, but the Timberwolves were a bad matchup for him. Made a Freudian slip over there. I will never forget that Blazers series from 2019. But getting a really dynamic guy in Bogdan Bogdanovic and a really good and tall wing in DeAndre Hunter, would that be enticing to you, Ray, at all?
I kind of what Jake said in the way that this is probably the most attractive of all of the Michael Porter trades.
I agree.
At the same time, I don't think there's any. I think Mike is a clearly better player than Hunter. I don't think it's that ambiguous, and there's not a lot of like data that says, even defensively, that Hunter is more impactful than Mike. And so I think it becomes more about how you feel about Bogdan, which I like him. I think it's a bit of a risky trade in the sense that I don't want to break up the core in the middle of the season for something that you don't, if you're not, it's not a sure thing, I guess. And you might be left with a situation where Denver's best punch really lacks the spacing to really function in the way that it used to. So I don't love it. I do wish Bogey was on the team. It's not my favorite thing. And I think in the offseason, you'll have more opportunities to look at the whole roster. And if you are going to trade Mike, balance that out with other adjustments.
Yeah, here's the depth chart that Jake created here. So DeAndre Hunter would slide in as a small forward with the starters, and Bogdan would be a de facto point guard of the second unit next to Christian Brown, Peyton Watson, and Marvin Bagley Jr., who would be eligible to be signed as a buyout candidate because he is earning less than $12 million this season, right?
Yep, less than 12.8, yeah. So he's not one that you'd have to get under the first apron to sign if he gets bought out.
Yes, I will agree with both of you. I also don't want to break this four core right now, because right now you can take only one part of the court away. You don't have any options. This summer, you will be able to trade either of the core four guys, and that will give you more flexibility for sure. Okay, third proposal. Zeke Naji, Jalen Pickett, the 2031 first-round pick for Matisse Thybulle and Duop Reed of the Portland Trailblazers, and 3 second-round picks to sweeten the deal. What's the thinking here, Jake?
Yeah, this one is a very defensive-focused trade. Cost-controlled defense is what I would call it. You're trading away a pick and a couple guys not in your rotation, and you're getting Thybulle, who's on a reasonable contract, and Reith, who's got another year and a half on his deal at like $2 million per. So you're getting cost control, you're getting defense. As far as like Reith being your backup center, he's not really my type of backup center that I think they need. He's a little smaller, more of a floor spacing center, not a great rebounder, which is one thing that I don't love. I think they need some good rebounders, but yeah, just to sum it up, that would be the cost controlled going in on some defense trade.
So Ray, here's how the depth chart would look like. So you still have Christian Brown as your shooting guard here. You're moving Russell Westbrook to the second unit, and you're getting Thybulle as your 3 and Duop Reed as your 5 here. What are your feelings about this kind of depth chart?
This is fine. Like, I'm not, it's like I don't love it. It feels like one of those trades that Denver makes at the deadline. And, oh, we got a new backup center. Oh, they're also not good. And then we move on, and it doesn't really matter. And the core, the top 8 of the roster doesn't really change. Also, talking about that a little bit, Julian Strawther and Jeff Green, the year they won the championship, very statistically similar seasons they're having, like in terms of defensive, offensive effectiveness, the whole thing. So I'm fine with it. Doesn't change too much. You don't lose a lot.
It's a good comment on the bringing in a backup 5 who is going to suck like every other backup 5. By the way, last night, Zeke Naji looked great next to Joker.
5 blocks.
Surprise. it feels like not having to play every second of your game without Joker will help your production. Okay, we have two more trade scenarios here. First one is Julian Strother and Dario Saric for Davion Mitchell and Garrett Temple. I have to be honest, I didn't even know that Garrett Temple is still in the NBA. And I have to ask you, Jake, I think you had Corey Kispert last year in your trade ideas as well as Davion Mitchell. So we are talking about your guys, right?
Corey Kispert, I would definitely call one of my guys. I like what he does a lot. Mitchell is more of just a guy that I had heard last offseason was probably going to get moved before he got moved. And so he's just kind of a guy that I've included because I've heard he's available. And he's unique in the fact that he's sort of opposite of what a lot of Denver's bench guards have been, where he's a defender, but his offense is really questionable. And so it's kind of the Julian Strother problem in reverse. It's, hey, this guy can defend really well, but is he good enough offensively to even be out there on the floor in the playoffs? We'll see. So it's kind of the opposite of that question, but kind of a personal preference thing, I guess, which way they want to go. And then Garrett Temple, he's just kind of a salary match here. I don't think he'd play in Denver. So,
Ray, what do you think about addition of Davion Mitchell to our second unit? You're muted.
Sorry. Yeah, they'll play defense, and I'm sure Malone loves that. At the same time, I honestly believe in Julian Strother putting it together defensively more than I do Davion Mitchell putting it together offensively.
Yeah, that's a fair thing to say because those scouting reports during the draft where they say this guy is so talented, he has the length, he has the vertical, he has the athleticism. The only things he lacks is like passing and court vision and shooting
basketball.
and basketball in general. So yeah, I agree. It's more probable for a good offensive player to become eventually a good defensive player than the other way around. Okay, Jake, the last proposition from you is the Peyton Watson. This is a big one. Peyton Watson, Zeke Nnaji, Jalen Pickett, 2 first-round pick swaps from 28 and 30 for Terrence Mann and Chris Dunn of the Los Angeles Clippers. Elaborate, please.
Yeah, so kind of the motivation behind this one was trying to find a creative way for Denver to get a couple guys that are under contract for a while that can both defend. Dunn's a better defender than Mann is. And maybe capitalizing on a guy whose value is a little bit lower right now in Terrence Mann. It's like I note in that report, I think he's even registered a couple DNPs recently. The Clippers have signaled that they're not going to trade him, but if Denver were to put a California guy and Peyton Watson on the table who has a lot of really strong potential, I think they'd at least be willing to listen.
Ray, what do you think about this depth chart? So now we have Chris Dunn at the 1 and Terrence Mann at the 3 with a second unit. But you are losing Peyton Watson, so you basically don't have a backup 4, or you just wait for Vlatko Čančar to be ready to play again.
I do think the backup 4 is probably a more easily filled in spot by someone. I think it's like it's like type O blood or something. Like you can kind of, anybody can kind of fit in there. I think this might be something I say no to for sentimental reasons. Honestly, I just like my guys, but if that's a trade you could swing, I don't think it's value-wise, it's not bad. I do think it gives you some things you need, and I would still miss Peyton Watson. I'd have to take a look there. I'd be curious about like their contracts and how extensions might work for them, but I'm okay with it.
Terrence Mann has a larger contract. This is why you need all of the Najee and Pickett and Watson to trade for him. But he is expiring next year, right, Jake?
No, he's on an extension. So he's at about 11.4 this year.
Oh.
But then he goes up to, I think it's about 16 for the next 3 years. And 16 is a pretty reasonable number, you know, for a guy who I think could spot start next to Jokić. You know, you wouldn't want to pay that guy $20 million or anything, but I think it's reasonable.
Yeah, and when you say you don't want to pay that guy $20 million, now we get to the last segment of this show, and we're going to take a short break before we do that. I want to talk a bit about roster building going forward under this new CBA. Don't go anywhere. Okay, we are back. And Jake, you made a really nice point in your presentation at the end of it, and that is that the 7 teams with the highest betting odds to win the championship this season are OKC, Boston, New York, Knicks, Cleveland, Denver, Dallas, and Milwaukee Bucks. And Denver Nuggets is the only team with only one All-Star in this group. Dallas Mavericks actually had 0 before today because both Luca and Kyrie were injured for parts of this season, and both of them are realistically All-Stars. But now they get a real All-Star in Anthony Davis, so they actually have a 1+1 situation over there. Denver Nuggets is the only team among the contending teams with only one real superstar, the only one All-Star. Do you think this is sustainable? What are your thoughts about team building going forward?
Yeah, so I mean, this is a topic we could have done a whole show on, I guess, but to kind of put it briefly, sustainable maybe just because Jokić is so good and such a great example of somebody who makes their teammates better. Maybe it is sustainable, but I note in there that I kind of prefer the 2-star system. If you're able to get to that, I think among other things, it takes a burden off of Jokić in the regular season. It helps boost your bench lineups if you have a guy that is a star player who can really feast against opposing benches. You know, it just raises your consistency so much when you're able to have that. And I think under this new CBA where a lot of teams are treating the second apron as a hard cap, I just think the system going forward that we're going to see, and it's like you see on those title odds, is can we get 2 stars and then can we build around that? And we can swap out role players here and there. Maybe you have 1, maybe 2 more expensive guys next to those 2 stars. But I think that is the system I would go with going forward. That being said, it would be hard for Denver to pivot to that. We'll see if they're able to. But that's how I would do it.
Yeah, basically, it's really hard to have 3 max guys and then a bunch of pretty expensive guys next to them as well, which the Nuggets have right now. You need to really nail the 2 max guys to be able to have flexibility and depth around them. So, Ray, what would be your approach going forward? I mean, this is just if the Nuggets don't win a championship. If the Nuggets win a championship this year, I don't know how far-fetched that is, but if they do, I would pick the Boston route and just extend everybody and like keep everybody and try to repeat. But what would you do in case of Nuggets not being able to actually contend this year?
The tough part is that it's not that I don't think you can work with a 2A and a 2B and a 2C on a roster and have it work. You just can't all pay them like they're just all number 2, because that's just not what they are. And that's not, I don't want to, it's not me attacking Jamal or Mike or Aaron or anyone in particular. And because of that, and because at least we'll see about the Michael Porter situation, but with Jamal and Aaron, they're committed to those guys. I think if you, and because they fit together so much in a complementary way, it's hard to trade one of them without maybe needing to trade more than one of them. That's my sense of things. And if you're going to do that, I'd rather see them go. We just saw Luca get traded to the Lakers. Like, if you're going to if you're going to trade them, can you go find like an actual star player to pair with Jokić? And or commit to whoever is willing to take less money.
Yeah, I flip in my mind almost every day about the 2 pathways for the Nuggets going forward. One pathway would be to just take those 2 max contracts and split them in more smaller contracts, if it's possible. Like, that's not easy to do. Like, you're not gonna trade a $50 million of Jamal Murray for great $25 million per year guys. Like, that's just not possible. That's not gonna happen. You're probably gonna take one of, like, I don't know, 25, another of 15, and then like 10 million of dead money or somebody that nobody wants. And the same thing with Michael Porter. Like, if you're trying to get more depth that way, and the completely different path would be to actually try to trade for a de facto all-star player, and as Jake proposed or have an idea, is to actually have a for the first all-star next to him. What do you think, Jake, would be more probable of those 2 scenarios?
Well, you kind of cut out there for a second for us. But
So do you think the Nuggets would have a clearer path of becoming better by changing Jamal and Michael Porter into 4 good rotation guys, or trying to push for the second all-star? What is more probable and more realistic?
Yeah, so I think, if you want to go down that route, I think you kind of canvas the league and see what the value is on each player. I think Jamal, if he has a strong playoff run, but maybe it's not the best, I think his value will be okay. You can probably get a good package back in return for him. But then I think you also probably have to trim around the edges to try and restore some of your draft capital. So, for example, Peyton and Christian are both extension eligible this summer. Maybe you move one and get a draft pick for them to kind of refill your stockpile. And then you trade one of your core players for a package of role players. And now it's like, okay, we have tradable contracts. We have multiple first-round picks. Now we can really get into position to get, the next guy that's available. And, who knows who that'll be. Nobody would have said a year ago that De'Aaron Fox was getting moved, and obviously Luka Doncic in the same boat. And so I think for that reason, it's important to keep some flexibility as far as smaller contracts that you can combine and get a star player for them.
Ray, have we come to the point where we are not sure we can finish the games with the same starting 5 we are starting with, considering how bad of defensive performance we've seen so far from Jamal Murray, Michael Porter, and Nikola Jokić this season?
I think the challenge is that Mike, Jamal, Aaron to some degree, Russ to a degree, they're all kind of matchup. None of them are matchup proof. That is to say that if I had my druthers, they would all kind of be flexible. You sit everyone down, you have a conversation like, hey, some matchups, Minnesota, for example, Aaron, you're going to play a lot. You're probably going to start. You're probably going to close games. Some matchups, maybe you want to play a little bit smaller. You want to run Mike at the 4 more, and you want to bring Aaron off the bench. I understand the NBA, there's always someone going in that's like, it doesn't work that way. And there's egos involved, and there's money involved, and all those things. But I think at the very least in a playoff setting, no, you can't start and finish games with the same lineup every single night. And I think that will be a change Denver needs to make if they're going to win a title.
Do you agree with this, Jake? Should they, let's forget about the core 4. Should they think about changing their top 3 offensive weapons going forward?
You just mean roster wise?
Yeah, roster wise, like replacing at least one of the core 3 guys going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think you probably give this group one last shot, and I know in that report that I think that's what they're going to do. I think maybe they open a roster spot with a small trade and then go from there. And I think you probably put a lot of weight into these last 2 playoff runs, as in last year and this year, going forward. Who's disappointed? What's their value like, and how do we move forward with it? I think they have to be open with everything, including moving Jamal or moving Michael Porter, or who knows, maybe moving both if it calls for that. I think you have to be open to those things because Jokić is so good, and relatively speaking, you don't need a ton around him to really be a great championship contender. Now, of course, it's hard to build that, but just relatively speaking to other players, it should be a lot easier than it is.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. I think we've covered a lot of stuff regarding the trade deadline that is coming in 4 days. Probably somewhere around this time, right? Do we know the exact hour of the trade deadline?
It's either 3 p.m. Eastern or 3 p.m. Mountain. I don't remember which one.
Yeah. So basically similar to this. So count it, people. It's 96 hours to the end, and we'll see if the Nuggets are going to pull off a trade or sign a buyout guy after the trade deadline. Unfortunately, they will probably not be able to sign Justin Holiday, who just signed for Virtus Bologna in Italy, a 3-month contract, which will probably take him out of the buyout, not buyout market, but the free agent market this season. Ray, do you have something new to report on the Four Corners Media, or something that's in the works?
CT and I will probably do a show around the trade deadline, which is, I just confirmed, is 3 Eastern on Thursday, either that afternoon or later that night. And we'll see what happens. You never know, apparently, how groundbreaking trades can alter the NBA.
What about you, Jake? Do you have something to promote for the mass audience?
Nope, nothing to promote from me. Just, I'll always be posting from my socials if something goes down. You should get an update from me. I am on Blue Sky as well. Just haven't posted there yet. Just made an account recently, but look out for any updates from me if the Nuggets do end up doing anything.
Again, go to the podcast description to find Jake's amazing preview of the trade deadline. Go also to the notes to see the link to Ray's written content on the Four Corners Media. And that is all I've prepared for you this week, my dear listener. And please, with a cherry on top, take the word prepared very loosely. Well, I did some work for this week at least. Be well, be safe, be kind to everybody. Call your mom, and until next week, Trail Lyles.